Hey there, welcome to the table. So it looks like I will get some time tonight, get started a little bit early, and one of the reasons I'm feeling really good about being able to start this for a second time is some folks put in some really seriously good time to come up with a player aid. So there's a player aid for this, and then there's a second one, which is called a detailed sequence of play. They're both formatted slightly different, but they both seem to have the same information. This one's a tad easier to read, just because it's spaced a little better. But because it's spaced nicer, this one I think has more information in it. So I have them both printed out. We can refer to both. They do a great job of summarizing, because the rule book does not exactly follow the sequence of the game. And that's what makes it hard. Because if I could just step through the rule book as I'm playing the game, it would be easy. But this rule book sort of steps through the game, but then you have to flip back and forth and flip back and forth. And there's something that was written in the setup section that you're supposed to remember when you get to this section. Anyways, I'm not going to belabor that point. Let's go ahead and get started. One other thing that a viewer mentioned that got updated by the developer is that I was making a choice between events, and you don't get to choose between events. You are literally supposed to shuffle these together. And it's sort of like this deck here. See how there's a passive on top, and then eventually there's a military? You shuffle them and you get to see the one that's going to be on top. So, for example, when I shuffle this event deck, if it's a darker color, then I know it's going to be a public event. But if it's a lighter color, it's a private event, and you don't really get to choose which one you just take whatever's on top. So those events that were causing bankruptcies and all kinds of nasty things for the Romans are a little bit more rare, right? Because in the last playthrough that we did, we drew, I think, a card that made the Romans go bankrupt. And that was because I figured, okay, if I'm going to be a barbarian player like blue, they're the Goths, I'm going to try to pick a public event, and then, I slap it on to, the empires that are in place. So that's what I did. And now if I were the blue player, I have to take what's on top. I don't get to choose. So that means the event that causes the, the bankruptcy could be one of these events, which you can tell I didn't do a real good job of shuffling. So let me do this a little bit more. I think that that's actually a pretty cool idea. I never would have figured that out from the rulebook. So that's the one weird thing about this game is, the rulebook just doesn't explain stuff like that. I mean, you do have two different event decks, but I never would have thought that I'm supposed to shuffle them together. And, now that it was explained to me, it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Anyways, that has already inspired me to like this game just a tad bit more. One thing that you guys probably aren't aware of is I actually recorded a second playthrough of this and then deleted the entire thing and never uploaded it. So this is actually my third go, even though for those of you who are viewing, this would be my second. In my third go, Rome had a plague and went bankrupt. It was not a good day to be a Roman. But it was because I was specifically drawing from the public events, and I won't get to do that. Okay, so we're going to follow the player aids and see how well it works. I sort of did a practice run, or at least read through, almost like reading a script of a movie, and it's quite good. It has a lot of the tables right into the player aid as it should, so I don't feel the need to have to flip back and forth, which I'm quite happy with. Okay, so let me try to share this with you. So the way this one reads is obviously it starts on the barbarian nation's age, but we skip all of this, right? So none of the aging happens. You don't start until the event phase, which is actually here in section 3. So on turn 1, you don't start until the event phase. And the only thing that I wish, like this references like where in the rules this is, but this is actually phase 1.c, I believe. I wish this would have reflected the actual phase in the rulebook. Instead, he just numbered it, you know, like a regular numbering system. So that part is not quite as helpful. Whereas I think over on this one, they did number it exactly. So for example, right here, 1.c, you can see is the events. Let me zoom in for you there. So you can see that one's labeled C properly, which is what the rule book labels it as. So this one wins the nod for that. But either way, no matter which one you read, each player draws one event, regardless of nations you control. You have to use pillage markers to count, blah, blah, blah. An event may not target an inactive nation. Public are red, private are brown, and can be kept until later. You know, if we come over here, it says more or less the same thing. Players draw one, regardless. Publics are red, brown. Event may target an inactive nation. The pool public event is the only time the discards are shuffled back. So there is a actual event that causes discards to come back. So you already see that there's one extra piece of information in this one that was not in this one, even though this one was easier to read. Okay, so that's just the point I'm trying to make. This is actually a nice little rule to remember. I did not even remember that, and I've read these rules several times. Okay, so there's no need to beat around the bush on this one. This is pretty straightforward. The order that we draw is not written on either one. Oh no, it is written on this one. This guy does not list the order. It just says each player draws one event per turn in player number order, which over here, you can see that that's Romans, Huns, Persians, and then Goths. Okay, so already we have ourselves a bit of a, I apologize, I'm just trying to, I have a lot of papers on this table, and I'm trying to be a little organized about this. So I'm going to just flip this over and put it underneath. I had to move the camera for that. Okay, so Romans are first, and as you can see, you just have to take what's on top. So this makes it a little bit different, and you can see there is going to be a public event right here. So that would be the Persians get that event. So that'll be interesting. So this is for the Romans. Sedition. Play when an interception is announced. The intercepted stack's nation may bribe the intercepting stack. So whoever's being intercepted can bribe the intercepting stack into inaction. The intercepted stack's nation must have a stack in a province adjacent to the intercepting nation. The intercepted stack's nation decreases its treasury by 5 or 10 if the intercepting stack has a leader. If there are insufficient funds, the bribe is not possible. The bribe succeeds if a D2 check is passed. If it is successful, then many details in the appendices. Okay, so obviously we could play this card. It says may bribe. So it's not like you can force somebody. I don't really like this event. This isn't very helpful. But this belongs to the Romans, so I will pass it over to the Roman pile. Next up are the Huns. Barbarian Coalition. May not be played during turns 1 and 2. Up to 4 barbarian nations, including nomads, chosen by the card player, form an alliance for 1 turn. No more than 2 nations controlled by the same player may be in the alliance. So you can't do this with just your own players or your own nations that you control. And it says form an alliance, so I don't even think you get to choose. That's an interesting one. And this goes to the Huns, so I will move this over to there. Okay, now we're going to the Goths. Scarcity. Select a civilized area at random, so we got to use the table. Roll again if the area selected already suffers from famine. Put a scarcity counter on the affected area. All provinces and city income from the affected area is reduced by 1/4. This is just an annoying one. I mean, yeah, it does hurt whatever player it becomes a part of, but it's annoying to count 1/4. And then the income loss as any is reduced by $2 for every granary province controlled by the nation. This reduction applies to each famine and scarcity. So we don't even get to pick who it goes on. It's just a random thing. And the table that they're referring to is actually in the back of the player aid of one of these tables. So, for example, this is the Persians player aid, but on the very back, there's a table for selecting randomized civilized area, and you roll a d10. So let's roll one, and I rolled an 8. Okay, so and then I needed to also roll a d2. So if even number is a check mark, so I rolled an odd. So it would be a d2x, right? And if I scroll in, an 8 is Oriens. Oh gosh, oh that's over by Israel. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and do that. So a scarcity marker. That's a good question. What is a scarcity marker? What does one look like? I would say it looks like that. That's a famine marker. I'm assuming famines. That would be famine. And the reason I know it's a famine because it says minus 33%. And this one says minus 25%, which would be exactly what the scarcity says. So I have no idea what penuria means. I'm sure it's Latin for scarcity, but that's a scarcity marker. And I did not know that until just 2 seconds before I showed it to you. So we put the scarcity marker here. And like it says, everything is going to be minus 25%. So this is going to impact the Byzantine Empire when they do their income. Now, if they happen to have a granary symbol, which is these right here, right? There's 2 of them here. Then that reduces it by $2. Okay? The Byzantine has the Egypt, and there's 2 of them here, so that means it's going to reduce it by $4. Just this alone is reducing it by $4. This is going to reduce the income, which is 9, by 1/4. And so, 9 divided by 4 is what? $2. So we already know that we don't even have to do the calculation. This $4 erases whatever the $2 is that this is going to reduce the income by. And then, oh, by the way, there's another granary marker here, so that makes it $6. They have plenty of grain to counteract whatever the famine was, or in this case, scarcity. So it's a really silly event, but it is what it is. All right, so that'll go away at the end of the turn. Okay, and then we go to the last player, which is the Goths. Now, if you were the Persians, the fact that that impacted the Byzantines was the right call. So now we're on the Goths, and they get tactics. You play it during a battle. The target stack gains an extra black die during the battle round, or in advanced combat, they're going to get a +2 bonus for the first battle round die roll. Now, another thing that got clarified on Board Game Geek, there's archery rounds as well. So when they say battle rounds, that does not count archery. There's archery rounds, and then there's melee rounds. And to be quite honest, battle round is bad terminology. It should be melee, the first melee battle round, or something like that. But that's how this would apply. Okay, so I'm gonna just lean over here and hand this to the blue player. And like I said, well, let me just show you. I'm gonna zoom out a little bit. So I got the game box and a whole bunch of tokens over here that I haven't even sorted out because those are nations that come in later. And you can see I got, the Roman card here just for a quick grab. The yellow player has a whole stack of nations that they don't yet control. And then there's the yellow player set up over there. And then the red player, I'm on the Into the East board because that's the expansion board over there. So I'm covering it up with my red pieces. These are all the nations that are currently in play. They're just sitting up front. And then way over here to the right on my shelf, I have a whole stack of blue, and then I have a stack of green underneath there. There's all the player aids. I got all my baggies from storing the components over here, and then way over here I have my rule book. I mean, it's just I'm definitely laid out here. But okay, so we got that, and then of course this space here is for the camera and for the player aid. So I'm trying to do that. Okay, so we made it through the event phase, which didn't need to take that long, but we were just trying to explain things. So let me get this flipped over. Okay, now we go to raids. And raids is something that here is only described in one brief paragraph, whereas here you can see it's a whole bunch of text. Now, the problem is that this player aid, what it does is it says see the raid player aid, which is actually later on. So if you keep going through the pages, raids are described there. Why they chose to do that, I don't know. I mean, I'm not trying to criticize it. It's just that it's weird. Like, this raid section should just be where the raids are. I mean, I don't understand why it needs to be in its own section later. So that, but when you look at this section, though, it's really nicely laid out. Excuse me. So we'll try to use both. Raids are something that we only did that one time, and it was with the picks. But, so, okay, we have to do in turn order on the timetable sequence. It says raids are issued from the province indicated on the nation card. If the card specifies an area, choose a province from within that area, okay? It's not even just that. The timetable itself tells you where the raid's going to be as well. And so I'm reading just the other one here. Some barbarians called raiders stage raids as listed in the timetable. The raid is from the province on their nation card. 2 units conduct the raid. If the pool has 3 or more, they're picked at random. And then, and then of course there's a procedure for the raids. And here you can see 2 units for the raid. Raiders have no units on the map until they settle down, which is a thing. And barbarian nations may also raid, but they do this during the military phase. So they don't do this right now. So that was helpful information. The raid issues from the province where the horde is located. That's for when barbarians do raids. And maybe that's why he moved it to its own section, because the barbarians can do raids. It's a little confusing to me because a raid and a military conquest are more or less the same thing. I guess there is this raid outcome table. I don't know, it's not that exciting. So you're supposed to place a raid marker on the target until the raid is resolved. I don't even know what I guess this would be a raid marker. This thing right here. That's a raid marker. So, okay. So they both have steps. This one has steps, so does the other one. We'll use this one. Target a single civilized enemy province. Okay, well, first thing we got to do is let's go grab the timetable. There are going to be 3 raids in the beginning of the game. I know this because I've looked this up several times, but so if we look at the timetable, the Berbers go first, and they're going to raid in Africa. See, this is what I mean. The timetable does tell you. So Berbers are going to raid Africa. The Kushans are going to raid Persis, which is where Mesopotamia is, and the Picts are going to raid Britannia. Okay, so we got the idea. The Berbers, by the way, are here. That's the green player. The Kushans is actually the Kosani, which is the red player up here. Okay, and then the Picts I have. Well, I had it down here. What did I do? I still have it. It's right here. It's the blue player, the Picts. And we did that in the last playthrough. Okay. Now, what it's saying is that the nation card itself tells you what they're invading. So let's put it to the test, right? So the barbers are first, if I remember correctly. And I guess you could theoretically just go through every nation card, and you'll see that there's a turn 1 here. So this is helpful if you don't want to look at the timetable. And yeah, it says to Africa, just like the timetable says. And the way the rules work is it's always 2 units. And if there's more than 2, you have to randomly pick them. Well, in this case, there's only 2. And basically, the raiders are going to just fight until they die. And you get points if you can kill things. So they're going to raid Africa. Africa, of course, is here. Africa has several things going on. We have the Romans themselves, which are here. And then we have way over here, the African province actually goes across. And it doesn't end until, actually it goes all the way across, all the way to here. So Mauritania, let me make sure. It's really hard, folks, to see. Do you even see these little purple lines that are going across like this? I mean, they're really hard to see. It would have been nice if that was a lot better. And you can see it's almost like little stitch marks on a baseball, right? And so that is the line. And then this, of course, is Africa up here. And Africa sort of goes along the coast. And then Mauritania is underneath, basically in the worthless land. Yeah, so Africa goes all along the coast there, and Africa ends here. You can see the little hash marks going. So that is Egypt over there. Okay, so they're going to invade Africa. So we could actually attack the Mauritanians, or we could attack Africa itself. If we attack the Romans, they do have elite and heavy units, whereas the Mauritanians would not have elite or heavy units. I honestly don't know what the right approach is on this. I think this is where playing the game would be to my advantage, but I don't have that experience. I mean, I do have the experience of doing battles the last time around, and I personally think that if we can hurt the Romans, that's better than hurting the Mauritanians. Also, I'm looking at this and see they have a mountain advantage. See the little mountain symbol? And they also are archers. So that means that they get to fire first. Now the Mauritanians have a little mountain ambush symbol, but I don't think they're going to get to do it because you can't ambush somebody else who also has a mountain symbol. And I don't think that this heresy marker makes a difference in the battle. Which is better? I'm going to attack the Romans, and that may be a really dumb move. I may regret that. So we're going to attack the Romans in Africa proper here. So now the other thing is they have a fortified city. Well, actually, that's not a fortified city. They just have a city there. Yeah, let's give it a try. And if I made a mistake, please accept my apologies. The other choice was to attack one of these two, which they would have gotten to do an intercept and all that jazz. So let's, I'm going to lift the little player card out of the way. And I almost forgot, we got to get out our score sheet, right? Because there's a potential for them to score some points. And we actually started to do that. But I'm going to have to use a new sheet here. So I'm doing this off camera, my apologies. All right, so I got the score sheet out. Okay, so let's figure out what happens during a raid. You have to target a single civilized enemy province with an empty city site. Okay, well, we can't do that one. That's not an empty city site. So I think that just answered the question for us. All that deliberation for nothing. And here's my explanation. That's not an empty city site. There's a city there, even though it's not fortified. So the raids have to go somewhere else. So this does not have a city site. This one doesn't either. So I guess we're going to try to raid. Well, let's raid where the caravan is, right? So let's raid Lepto Leptis Magnus, or whatever this is, in Tripolitania. Let's try to raid that. We could also try to raid maybe Utica because it's worth 2 gold, whereas this is only worth a half. Yeah, let's do Utica. I'm changing my mind, but we'll do Utica, okay? So we chose that, okay? So it says, place the raid marker on the target until resolved. So I need to find the Barbary. Oh, I got it. That would be this one. So we're going to put a raid marker there. Okay, and then target province must be adjacent to the raider's starting location or a single intervening province raiding in depth. Well, the starting location, oh, raids are from Numidia. Well, let's figure that out. Where's Numidia? Oh, right there. It's almost as if I was a genius. So the raids actually are from here. So, perfect. Okay. So Utica is an excellent choice. Okay. Limes or fortified city cannot be crossed. Passing through a garrison province suffers a penalty. Amphibious raiders can cross one sea zone to reach their target. Raiders may not be intercepted. Interesting. So we're not allowed to intercept them. So that's an interesting thing because we're literally right next to them. All right, so we have to roll a d10 and then there's some modifiers. So I'm going to move the camera away from this so you can see the table. Excuse me. All right, so what we're doing is this right here. I'm just going to roll the die real quick. So we rolled a 6. So now let's look at the modifiers. So -1 per civilized unit present in the target province in any province or sea zone. Oh, that's not the case. Or sea zone pass through. Yep. +1 if the previous raid is a raid minus marker. +2 if the previous raid is a raid plus marker. So I'm assuming that we are a raid minus marker because this is the first time we're raiding there. Let me see. This, by the way, doesn't explain plus or minus. There we go. The raid marker lasts just 1 turn. A raid plus eliminates any limas present. Oh yeah, because it's based on what you rolled here. So we don't have any of these, the +1 or the +2. There wasn't a previous raid marker there. Okay, so the result. We rolled a 6, so we get a raid minus marker. So that raid minus marker will stay in that space. So they gain $1 and 1 VP, and then place the raid minus marker. Okay, so that's what we would do. So we're going to place the raid minus marker there in Utica. So that means that the Romans could possibly move into Utica to help protect it for the next time around. Okay, so the next thing. The Barbary don't actually take money. There is no money for raiding nations. So I'm really amazed that they wrote that in because that was, I think, an error in the rule book. So let me see what the other player aid says the same dang thing. Gain 1 money and 1 VP. Place the raid minus marker. Oh, I know why. If you're a barbarian doing a raid, you actually get money. But raiding nations don't. All this is about is victory points. And here, I'll show you real quick. The barbers, they only score points here. And so for every unit eliminated while raiding, they get a point. If they get a raid minus counter, they get a point. And then 3 points if they can get a raid plus counter. That's all they're trying to do, is they want raid minus, raid plus, or eliminate units. Okay, so the barbers got 1 point for green. So I know it was a lot of work just to score 1 point, but that's what the raiding units do. And so we go here to the green player, and the barbers right here are the barbari, and I like to use hashtags or Indian hashes. Is how I used to call it growing up. So I'm doing 1 point there. And what I mean by the hashtags, if you're not familiar, is I would do 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. So I'm talking about counting like that. So that's how I typically do scoring. So just so you understand my nomenclature. And yes, I got 1 point from the Barbary. All right, and I am trying to go a little slow because I want to make sure I don't miss anything. This player aid has been fantastic. Actually, both of them have. I don't think you can go wrong with either one. And I actually feel like I have some sense of control and direction now. I probably would have been flipping through the rulebook 20 times. Now, you could leave these here, but technically they're not on the map. And the rules are very clear about that. These guys go back home. And there is like a possible outcome where the raiding unit is lost permanently, and you can see that there. And then what that would mean is you actually flip it over and you can't use it anymore. So the barbers would only have 2 units for the entire game. And then right here is settled raiders. Raiders that remain in place after a raid must resolve an immediate battle if there's any units in the province. The raider nation becomes inactive on 6B. So there is this concept called settled raiders. I honestly don't remember that part. Oh, you need to roll an 11 or 12. Right here, you get a raid plus, and then the raiding units remain in the target province. That's what the 11 or 12 does. So you have to roll really well to be able to settle. So it's not like it's a choice. I mean, it is a choice, but you have to roll an 11 or 12 to even make that choice. And if a raider nation does settle down, it becomes inactive until the timetable activates them. So the barbers, by the way, are activating every turn all the way up to turn 12. Actually, they do skip a few turns, but anyways, that wasn't so bad. I think we can handle this. So let's do the next one, which are the Picti. So the Picti are obviously going to raid Britannia, and they raid from Caledonia. So I'm smart enough to know to check that this time. And how did I know where? It says it in big bold letters, raids from Caledonia, okay? And we know they're going to Britannia, all right? So the Picti, of course, have 3. And I'm trying not to remember which ones are which. And one of them fell out of my hand, so that's the one I won't pick. So the 2 that are going to raid is a soldier and an archer, okay? All right, so here's their little raider marker, and let's go figure out where they're gonna raid. Okay, so they're raiding way up here, and Caledonia is this province right here, so they have to raid Bernicia. In fact, that is the only place they can raid. It has an empty city space. So I'm going to put these 2 guys here in Caledonia and the raid marker there for now. Okay, so yeah, a Lemus cannot be crossed, but there's clearly a Lemus there. All right, and then we're going to just go ahead and roll the die. So I'm going to roll it up here for you. And there you can see I rolled a 5. -1 per civilized unit presence in the province. I don't think the Lemus counts as a civilized unit. That would actually be a very good question. Give me a second. I'm going to look in the real rule book for this one, because I think it does cover this. I'm trying to find the section that explains what a Lemus is, because I think it, I mean, here it is. It's considered a standard military unit. unmovable fortified units that stop invasions at a border. So it is considered a civilized unit. All right, so I was a little far away from the camera, but in case you didn't hear me, this is considered a military unit for any civilized nation. So therefore, it is a civilized unit. So the civilized unit causes a -1 to their roll, and that makes sense. I mean, it's a fort for Pete's sake. So you got some raiders trying to invade a fort. They're going to get a -1 to their die roll. Total, I can buy that in a heartbeat. There is no previous raid marker, so that 5 becomes a 4. And if I look at the table, 4 or less is a failure. So one of the picks are lost permanently. So I'm just going to roll one more time. Even is the one on the left, odd is the one on the right. So we got the odd, so the archer is dead. So the picks still have 2 units left, and then this raid marker does not go on the board. So the blue pick player didn't get anything. And just so for your edification, the raids only last for 2 turns. So the fact that they lost a unit is almost no big deal, because next turn they'll go in with these 2 units then, right? And in fact, the type of unit they have doesn't play a factor in the die roll for the raid outcome. Only if they somehow get 11 or 12. Okay, one last raid, and this one actually goes to the red player. So we have the Kush, which that's how in America we know about these people. They're the Kush, but they're the Kosani or the Kushans. Okay, so this is their little raid marker, and you can see they're going into Persis from Kushania. So that would be somewhere over here. Let's figure out where. I said I've heard of them. I didn't say I knew exactly where they were. Persis, of course, is this area, but where's Kushani? That's the question. I would say it's over here because we've been hearing about it a lot in the news with Syria and all the stuff going on with Russia. There's Assyria, Euphrates, Assyria, Atropatene, Osrion, Amida. Should have known that. I've set this game up 100 times. Coal Syria. All right, where is Kush? It's got to be next to Persis somewhere. Oh, right here. Right there. I would never have guessed that. That's way over off to the side. Okay, so this is where they're coming from. And so clearly they're going after Hyrcania, which does have a civilized unit inside. So they're going to get a -1 to their dice roll. And let's roll. Let's try not to destroy the board. Let's roll here. Ooh, I rolled a 9. That is a good roll. So let's look at our table one more time. So they are going to get -1 for the civilized unit. And so that would be an 8, which lets them put a raid plus marker down there. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So a raid plus marker. And it draws a pillage marker, gain 3 victory points, and then place the raid plus marker. So the 3 victory points, of course, is written on the card as well. But that's fine. So I'm going to go over here and give the red player 3 victory points for the Kosani. That was a job well done. Okay, so we do that real quick, and then we're going to draw a village or pillage marker. So let me find that. I just have a tray of them. I'll randomly grab one. So this is a pillage marker, and then the so we got the usurpator, and then 3 gold. So I don't think the 3 gold matters because they don't get to keep money. And no, I don't get to give it to the red player, because even if I did, which one would I give it to? The Byzantines or the Romans or even the Frankie? I mean, so That doesn't do me any good. So I don't know what the pillage marker does per se. It might be just for the event. So pillage markers provide $1 to $3. Some have a secondary event. If it's a public red scroll, resolve immediately. If private brown scroll, pillaging player keeps the marker. The usurpator calamity. See, so this other player aid actually gets into all this, which was really nice. If the drawing nation is barbarian, it's ignored. If civilized in decline, it happens automatically. Otherwise, it happens on a D10, result 0. This is considered a barbarian nation, even though it's a raider nation. It's even lower tier than barbarian, so we ignore it. So the event doesn't do anything. Once the event's resolved, put a single random new pillage face down on the city site until the archer is removed. The city cannot be looted again. So the raiders were able to pillage that city, I guess. And so the plus marker is there, and so is a pillage marker. And that gets cleaned up during, I think, the income phase. All right, so we did the raids for all three. The next step is caravans, but that's skipped on turn 1, and I do like the fact that they denote that. And then after this is going to be diplomacy. And diplomacy, we actually didn't get that wrong. Diplomacy is, yeah, everybody draws cards. It's based on their leaders, and then that's how they can do different types of things. I do like the fact that this player aid gets into all the different diplomacy cards and what they do. I like that. It spares me from having to look up in the rulebook. And just to be fair, the other one does a similar thing, but it's somewhere else. It's another one of those where you gotta, like, there's an actual whole page for diplomacy on this one. And I think it does get into a bit more detail, because look, it goes into everything. So both player aids are good. This one's easier to read. This one I think is more thorough. But anyways, barbarians don't do diplomacy card draws. Kingdoms are first, then empires, in order of increasing age. So the kingdom, of course, is Persia, and it's at a 4, and then Byzantine and Romans would be the 3 and 9. So we would draw for Persia, and just so you can see here, kingdom only draws the leader's diplomatic bonus, which is the middle number, and I'll show you in a second. And then the empire draws 1 plus the diplomatic bonus, okay? I think they both say that. They should. All right, so what does that mean? So let me grab the Persian leader. That's this guy here. So he has this is the administrative bonus, the 1. The middle number here is the diplomatic bonus, which is a 1. My only beef is if diplomacy comes before administration, the diplomacy should have been the first number. To me, it should be in the order that the game's played. But I'm not going to complain about it. They're both the same number, so Persians get 1 diplomacy card. Now, when we get to the Byzantine, you're going to see they have a Caesar, which is a --1. They're still going to get 1 because they're an empire. And then the Romans have a Caesar and a name leader. I think you get to use either one, but the name leader is always going to be better than Caesar. As you saw, that Caesar was crap, and so is the Roman one. All right, so let's start with the Persians. They get 1. And it's a mercenary. It allows the nation playing the card to recruit 1 unit from a barbarian nation whose horde is adjacent or within one of its areas. Nation playing the card pays 3 gold to the target. The barbarian freely selects one of their units to grant to the card-playing nation, which they can place anywhere at once in its own territory. The unit just can't fight on its own. Okay, so the Persians are, if they're willing to pay 3 gold, they can get a nation from a neighboring barbarian. Here's the problem. There are no neighboring barbarians to the Persians. There are inactive kingdoms, the Armenians, and then that yellow or that white color up there, and you see the Persians already have one of their units, and then I can't remember the name, the Gochi or whatever, they're the dark blue. though all three of those are inactive kingdoms. And then the Kusani, I really should take those units off the board because remember I told you they come back off. But that's not a barbarian nation. Raiders can't be, tamed in that kind of way. They're not a barbarian nation. They're raiders. That's the distinction between them. So this is a useless card for them, but the game rules do say you can sell them for $1. So what they're going to do, I mean, technically they should hold on to it because you don't get the buck until the end of the turn. So you can't just say, oh, I'll take my buck now. It doesn't quite work that way. So I'm going to go ahead and just put this over on the yellow player. And then we move to the Byzantines, which we already said they're only going to get 1. Graft. So it's used to immediately cancel a siege, cannot be refused. Player of the card must pay 1 gold to the besieging nation. So this would be if somebody's besieging one of their cities. As a Byzantine player, this is actually not a bad deal. So, got to give this to the Byzantines. All right, and then the Romans, you're going to see that Julianus here has a 1. So that means they're going to get 2 diplomacy cards. So they get a mercenary 1, which this one actually might be usable by them. Money is more their issue, but they'll get 3 gold to someone. They can actually take one of the barbarian tribes, which could be like the Alemanni, which belongs to the green player, or the Visigoths. And then they have a graft again to cancel a siege. These are both really helpful for the Roman player. So I'll put those with the Roman player. All right, so we are now done with diplomacy. And you can see here that like there's graft being explained, and then there's mercenary. So those rules tend to be written right on the card. So actually, I'm realizing I'm making a mess here. Give me a second. I can't put them upside down. They're getting out of page order. Okay, so now we move to the administration phase. The administration card phase is skipped in the first turn. That would be using this deck here, so we're not going to use that in the first turn. It's an interesting mechanic, and I'm looking forward to turn 2 so we could try it. Next is the income phase, which is brutal. So this is going to take the rest of this video. So if this type of topic bores you, you can already just move to the next video. But we're going to go into some depth here to calculate income. The problem with income is we have to do it for each nation. The barbarians won't be getting income, so that part's good. But it's not just income. We also have to do expenses and then recovery from pillage, which the Persians actually have, and then resolve any bankruptcy, which I don't think we're going to have to deal with, but we are familiar with this from the first playthrough. So, and then there's purchases. So there's a lot going on here. Like I said, this is going to take the rest of the video for sure. And then if we have time, we'll do revolts, but I think that might be the next video. So the good news is once we get through all this, we'll be actually in the military campaign part of this. So let's do income first. And this is a little on the brutal side, like I said, because it's just slow. Okay, so the income is done in nation activation order, and that is youngest to oldest. And you can see here turn orders by nation activation kingdoms, then empires. That's always nation activation order by decreasing age. So yeah, actually the oldest goes first and then the youngest. And then barbarians only do recovery from pillage. So that part's good. Okay, so this would mean that we actually do the Roman Empire first. So empire versus kingdom. So here you can see cities plus capital plus commerce plus tributes plus provinces if a kingdom, or areas if an empire. And then it gives you a nice little couple bullet points on what everything's worth. Now, if I come to this other one, it's a little nicer looking. In fact, here you can see the income is cities, and then you can see for kingdom, and then for empire, and then commerce, and then tributes. So this is cities, and then capital, commerce, tribute. And then you just see plus, 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 plus across the top. I actually like this other one, so we're going to do this one as our guide. And that's why I have them both printed out, because it's actually one's better than the other in some cases, and blah, blah, blah. Okay, so for the Romans, we get 1 gold per level for each city. And then you get the controlled areas, 1 for each controlled area, 2 if it's total control. And then controlled provinces and their cities, unless in revolt, capital plus 10. Okay, so actually the other one reads a little cities plus capital plus commerce plus tributes. Areas of empire. Areas is just 1 per controlled area, 2 of total control. Yeah, so for the empire, it's a simple addition of $2 for every area that they have total control, which should be everywhere because we haven't budged a single unit anywhere, right? So they're going to get $2 for every area that they control, and then they get their the value of the cities themselves, and then they're going to get 10 for their capital. So we already know they're getting 10 for the capital. So let's just do that right now. And then how many areas do they control? Well, there are several ways we can do this. We can look on the map and calculate it. You can also look at the setup. And the setup is on the back of one of these player aids. Give me a second. The Goths player aid. You can see that the Eastern Roman Empire is, the whole scenario is on the back of the Goths player aid. And you can see that the Eastern Roman Empire starts with 6 areas under their control. Egypt, Asia, okay, so let's look at these and let's try to do this exercise. Egypt, and then Asia is, I'm sorry, this is Byzantium. I'm sorry, we're doing Rome. Rome has 7. Africa, which is here. Britannia, which is, of course, up there. Gallia M and Gallia S. So here's Gallia M, and Gallia S is in the top. Hispania, Illyria, and Italia. Hispania, Illyria here, and Italia. It's Italy. And so yeah, that's the 7 areas. So 7 times 2 is 14. So we're up to $24. Now, just in case you're cheating at home, they show an income of 70 right here. So we should get to 70. But let's do this exercise, because as the game moves on, you're not going to be able to just cheat and say, okay, I get $70. I mean, the map is going to dynamically change. We need to be able to calculate income. So I'm at $14 because of the 6 areas and the capital, okay? Remember, we're not going to get caravan money, so this 70 is actually going to be less because $1 was for caravan. We do get $2 for tribute, and that's the Mauritanians. And you can see that here. And actually, we only get $1 for tribute. That's the Mauritanians. You can see right there, it's $1. So we only get $1 for them. So that's another error in the player aid. So I said that was what, $14 plus 10 for the capitals, 24. Oh, down here, I'm sorry, tribute 1. They got it right. I was looking at the Byzantines again. My apologies. So for the Romans, they're saying 67. 7 areas for 14. We agree, right? Tribute of 1. We agree. capital of 10. We agree. So 14, 24, 25 so far. We don't get to count the caravan in turn 1. So we're at 25. They're saying we should get 30 for cities and 11 for commerce. So let's figure out what those are. The cities seems to me like the biggest pain in the butt. So let's start in this area here. For example, you have Africa. That city is a level 3 city, so that's $3, right? And then this is a 1 for 4. And I'm just moving on. So now we're in Hispania. There's 1 for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, that's a 2, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, I'm sorry, this is the capital, don't count that one, 21, 22, 23, 24, oop, that doesn't go there, 25, this is tricky, 26, 27, 28, and there's 2 that I missed somewhere. And I have no idea where I would have missed them. So I got 28 instead of the 30 that they counted. Did I count this one? Oh boy, this is painful. So here's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, here we go, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, I'm 1 off. I'm sure I missed one somewhere. But yeah, it's 30, and boy is that brutal, huh folks? So there is one thing that might save our bacon. Let me check the rule book. In the scenario book, it actually lists every province and area, and I'm hoping that it has their city income. Oh, it's not in the scenario book. It's in the rule book, I believe, at the end, very end. Okay, so like for example, this is the Italia. And you can see the city here and then the level. Okay, so this of course doesn't count, if you build a city. But like if we go into Italia, you can see this is a 1 and a 2, that's 3. And then Rome is 3 more for 6, 7. And then Ravenna is the capital. And this would be 8. And then if we, keep going, Illyria, 9, 10, 11. Hispania, 12, 13, 14. 15, 16, 17. 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. 23, 24. And then Africa, 27, 28. Interesting. Maybe we are supposed to count the, do you count the capital city twice? So you get 1 per level for each city, including your capital. And then that's the part that is bizarre. So yeah, I wanted to do this exercise so I can confirm what the book was telling me. And of course now I'm falling apart. Cities plus areas plus capital Oh, it does right here in the rule book. All controlled cities count as cities, including the capital. So we have to add Ravenna to the mix. And I think that gets us to our 30. Because Ravenna is a size 2. Yep, right here, size 2. So that's the 2 that we were missing. Okay, so 30. Let's go back to this. So 30 for the cities, we confirm. 10 for the capitals, 40. 54 for the areas, 55 for the tribute. We don't count this. So now it's saying we need 11 more for commerce. Commerce is the one thing, it has to do with your ships, but I never paid much attention to it. Let's see what it says. It says 1 per sea zone with a controlled coastal city not in revolt. Plus monopoly value if controlling all coastal cities and none in revolt. I think the monopoly value is this number that's written on the ship. Let's see, I'm sure this other 1 per sea zone with a add monopoly value as an additional income. Yeah. And if you're hearing thunder, you are hearing correctly. I have a massive rainstorm going on while we're playing this. And yes, the monopoly value is the this number on the ship here. Okay, so 1 income per sea zone where the nation controls at least a coastal city, not in revolt. And then if you control all the coastal cities of a sea zone that are not in revolt, you get the monopoly value. Okay, that makes sense. So let's start in Africa, for example. Here you can see that this sea zone is not controlled completely by Rome, because the Byzantines have this side. They have Greece, okay? They also have Egypt here, this little coast here. But they do have 1 coastal city here, so that's 1 point for Rome. This is another one for Rome, for 2. This one would be 3. Oh, that one is 4. And then the monopoly for this area would be 6, right? This monopoly would be 7. Nope. There's a Greece here, Byzantine here. So the coastal city would be 7, 8, 9. Nope, not this one. That's not a city. 8. So I'm at 8 so far. And if we keep going, we should have this one for 9. 10 because of this. And 11 because of that coastal city. This should be 12, and then 13 for this coastal city. I'm already way past 11, aren't I? So I don't think they were counting the monopolies. Because we got to keep going. I mean, here you got a 14. Well, yeah, you have a 14, because the only coastal city here is this one. And then this is 15. Strangely enough, though, that is where it stops. So I thought we were going to get a whole bunch more, but we really don't. So I counted 15. And it says counts as additional income of controlling all coastal cities. 1 per sea zone. Oh, only 1 per sea zone with a coastal city not in result. Okay, you only get $1 for a sea zone. So even though we have 2 anchors here, we don't get $1 each. That was my mistake. So here we get $1, just $1, that's it. This one, just $1 for 2. Here we get $1 for 3, plus the monopoly for 4, 5. $1 for 4 because of this, plus the monopoly, which is 5. $1 for 6. Plus the monopoly for 7. Nothing here, because we don't have a city. $1 for this for 8. And the monopoly makes it 9. So why don't I get to 11? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, I screwed up. This is 1, 2. So $2 for these two. $3 for this C-zone, plus 2 more is 5. This is 6, plus 1 is 7. And this is 8, plus 1 is 9. And then this is 10, plus 1 is 11. There you go. That's how we get to 11. Yeah, it would have helped Jeff if I would have actually figured this out before I hit record. But I think part of the joy of this is that hopefully those of you that are watching, you're learning through my mistakes. But yes, so that's how we get to 11. And, oh gosh, all of this was just for one empire. We still got 2 more to go. Okay, so we're at, we confirmed everything. So we just take 1 off the caravan. We should have $66. So in the beginning of the game, yes, you do get to cheat and just say, okay, we get $66 because you don't count the caravan. So for lack of a better place to write it, I'm just going to write it here on the score sheet, okay? So we're going to get 66. I'm just going to write it here in a corner. But now we have expenses. Okay, so the first expense is kingdoms have to pay maintenance for units. We don't, so we're okay there. We have to pay 1 to suzerains, 3 to federates, 1 for every province in revolt, and we have to pay 1 for every area under heresy, which are 2. So we're going to lose 2 from that. And then we have to pay 5 because we're in decline, which is true. So that's 7. So we are going to lose 7 just from those expenses. So 66 minus 7 is where we're at. Okay? And there's a very cardinal rule in the game. Way up here, you can only hold $20. So we have to spend until we're down to $20. Rome is not allowed to keep more than $20. Since they are in decline, I would highly advise that Rome keeps a full $20 in its coffers. But it's not a big deal because we get to do purchases over here, and we get to do all of that before we have to get down to $20. Does that make sense? So you don't have to spend all the way down to $20 yet. You still get to do purchases. And that $20 rule where you lose anything over $20 doesn't happen until we end this phase, okay? So we are sitting at 66 minus 7, which is what, $59. And if we want to keep 20, right, then we get to spend $39. So that's the idea. So let me study the purchases section so I can look a little more prepared. And I'm over an hour on the video anyways, and then we'll come back. And I know we're supposed to do this for every nation and then do this later for every nation. But because we're playing solitaire, we're going to go through everything for Rome, and then we'll do the next nation and do every. And maybe that is really the intention of this, but because we're supposed to do it in nation activation order. But yes, so we're going to come back and do purchases for Rome. There's no worries about bankruptcy. We don't have to recover from pillage. There's no empire collapse check. Actually, there is. There is going to be an empire collapse check, but I'm pretty sure we're going to pass it. Let's do that right now. I rolled a 7, which is a good hearty number. And you get to do pluses and minuses. So each age above 9, they are exactly at 9, so they don't get anything there. It is in decline, so it gets a +1, so it's 8. There was no calamity. There was no capital conquered. Then they get to subtract 1 for every area under control, which is 7. We just went through that during income. So 8 minus 7 is 1, and anything that's greater than 9, it collapses. We're nowhere near 9, so Romans are safe for turn 1. So we're going to come back for the purchases step. Thanks for watching. Stay awesome.